The following stories are told by Vietnam combat veterans for all combat veterans. Each shares one thing in common: the second front, the eternal battle with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This can manifest itself as impaired driving on American roads. Upon returning home, these soldiers suffered with the effects of combat trauma in a society where they no longer felt welcome. Many drank, like the veterans before them, to live day to day, for an adrenaline rush, to quell their nightmares. Some also drove drunk, again and again, pushing the limits of safety of themselves and loved ones, pitting themselves against anyone on the road. A few were stopped by police and found the system lenient. After years of living in extremes, they sought help and now give help in return. They are sons, brothers, husbands, and above all, comrades in arms. They have everything to live for and are committed to leaving no soldier behind in the second front. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is the result of direct personal exposure to an extreme stressor known as combat stress or combat trauma, which develops into characteristic symptoms of re-experience, avoidance, and increased arousal. For those combat veterans who suffer from PTSD, the need for safety and relief dominates their actions and choices. Too often, self-medication with alcohol and/or drugs is seen as the only option, which can lead to dangerous decisions like driving under the influence. Even in the absence of alcohol and drugs, flashbacks can induce dangerous behaviors like aggressive or erratic driving on American roads.
During the course of military history, it became known in the Civil War as soldier's heart. Moving on into, World War I, it became battle fatigue. World War II, it became combat fatigue or shell shock. A lot of different names that were attributed with it, and many of us had experiences with our uncles from World War II. When we came back from Vietnam, we were a lot more vocal. And we said, there's something wrong with us. We have seen things, we have done things that we need to talk to somebody about. The pain that you feel, you can suppress the pain in several different ways. One of the ways is through drugs, either prescription drugs or illegal drugs. You can suppress it through alcohol abuse.
What changed my father's experience, I think, with drinking and driving was the fact that one night he had driven home in his Corvette and had passed out in the driveway. He had no recollection of getting home, of leaving where he had been, and it didn't matter so much that he might hurt himself, but he had 2 daughters at that time, another baby on the way, and he realized that he could seriously injure someone else or leave his children without their father, which was a big thing for him.
I mean, my father was a World War II vet, submarine service in the Navy, and he had PTSD. He was depth charged by German ships in the Atlantic, so he had to live through that. When they came home from World War II, there were no official designations other than combat shock, shell shock, fatigue, and all those other things. They were self-medicating. My father went to the VFW post 3 or 4 times a week, and all they did was drink all night long, and we lived in that culture. My father used to drive home from the VFW post in the driver's seat with his hands on the wheel, and I had my foot on the gas pedal and the brake, directing him home. So when we came back from Vietnam, a lot of us looked at what the VA was doing to our friends, which was filling them full of drugs, and they couldn't function in society, they couldn't function in social world, they couldn't function in the work environment, family environment. And my tack was to look at the booze and say, well, my father was able to cope with all of this stuff by drinking, so rather than get pumped full of drugs at the VA, I'll self-medicate. So, Johnny Walker Black, Dewar's White Label, became my medication of choice. And so I was going through the same thing my father was, many years later in that ability. And only I didn't have a child that was able to drive me home. At that particular point in time, I was driving a Corvette with a 4-speed transmission, and I would have many, many nights leaving a bar and having no idea how I ever made it home. Get in the garage, park the car, turn the ignition off, and pass out. And my wife would be coming out at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, dragging me out of the car into the house. I'd sleep for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, get up, take a shower, and go back to work, and start the cycle all over again. So I think, you know, up until there became an official diagnosis through the DSM of post-traumatic stress disorder, we were just acting out what we had seen our fathers and our uncles go through after World War II. And that was why a lot of us chose to go the liquor route. I celebrated my 18th birthday in Vietnam, and was in an infantry unit, infantry squad leader. And in September of 1965, I was wounded, and some pretty serious injuries put me in a hospital for 2 years, a year in a naval hospital, a year in the VA hospital, 14 of those 24 months flat on my back. And it was during this time that my desire for alcohol was fed, and it was fed in two fashions. First of all, I was a legal dope addict. The Navy was giving me a shot of Demerol every 4 hours a day, every 4 hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I became hooked on Demerol, and finally, after about 7, 8 months, they had to wean me off of it. But the other thing that was going on was booze. The guys that could get off the hospital grounds and go out to the bars would come home back to the hospital at night with little miniature bottles of booze. And they'd bring me gin and vodka and scotch and whiskey and whatever they could bring in. And it, you know, after my Demerol shot at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd start drinking the booze. So we were very, very heavily engaged in doing a lot of drinking in the hospital.
As small children, we didn't really ask a whole lot of questions, but as we got older, we asked a lot more questions, and the stories started to come out. And it was clear that my father had been struggling for years with post-traumatic stress disorder that he never dealt with.
I used to drive about 50,000 miles a year, and it was not unusual for me to be totally enraged for most of my drive home. By the end of the day, after a 12 or 14-hour day plus the drive, I was just worn out. If you cut me off on the road, I would cut you off. I would do anything I could to get up in front of you, and I had been known to run people off the road numerous times because they did something that I didn't like or that I thought was stupid. And I could not have cared less at that moment. And unfortunately, there was, when these rages came, there was absolutely nothing I could do to stop it. It was just gonna happen. And I'm a very fortunate individual that I never killed anybody or seriously injured anybody, including myself. It was not uncommon to be on the road late at night and be drunk. I never did not have a bottle of scotch underneath the seat of my car. Drinking often, numerous times every week to the point of excess was just normal. And it stayed at a tolerable level for a number of years, but probably in the mid-'80s, I was working a midnight shift, and I'd get home at 7:30 in the morning, and the only way that I could fall asleep was to drink a couple of jiggers of bourbon and smoke a joint. It's the only way I could sleep. On my, was just after my 40th birthday, decided that I should maybe see how long I can go without having a drink. And it's been 23 years now. But what really got me on track was on my way to work, and somebody cut me off on the thruway. I used to go into totally uncontrollable rages. And I chased this individual down the thruway for at least 30 miles at 100 miles an hour, about a foot off his bumper. And all of a sudden I just said, "What is wrong with you?" And it was at that point that I went back to the VA after a number of decades. I hadn't been back there since 1973. And this was now in 2003. And I went and sought out help and have been in PTSD recovery since 2003 or 2004.
I wound up in Vietnam. I was with an infantry unit. I was in the 9th Division, 3rd to 39th, part of the 9th Division. I was in combat. I have a CIB, I have an Army Commendation Medal with a V device, another Army Commendation Medal AM Medal. And it was the most unpleasant experience of my life. I mean, somebody who wasn't there can't imagine what the deal is. It's just, it's nuts. It's something that no civilized people should really participate in. Wound up leaving Vietnam in August of that year. The 9th Division was pulled out. We landed in HICKS Air Force Base in Hawaii, which is next to Pearl Harbor. And the guys were all back from Vietnam. So while I was stationed at Schofield Barracks in part of the MP unit, I kind of noticed what I thought was an excessive amount of drinking. And there was a time that it seemed that almost every, I'm not going to say every time we worked midnights, the shift, but we were picking up guys who were drunk and try to make it across from Y&I Beach across over to Schofield, and there was a lot of fatalities. Every week somebody was getting in an awful lot of drinking trouble there. And I think that the guys were just, it was odd because I was happy to be back from Vietnam and hadn't gotten hurt there. That was it. It was kind of odd to me that they were so happy that they were home that they went out and got killed. You know, you think about it, and alcohol was really the major cause of all the crashes. The post itself even had a beer garden on it. I mean, the infantry was done at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then the party started. In looking back, I think that it was surprising how dangerous it could be for veterans after they survived combat and then wound up getting killed when they were actually supposed to be safe back on American soil.
If we didn't have contact, at least once every 3 days or so, and I'm talking just a few sniper rounds that make you hit the dirt, you know, take cover, that would give you an adrenaline, shot of adrenaline. You get a buzz off of that. We got addicted to the adrenaline. I think we were addicted to the adrenaline. And when we came home, we tried to subconsciously replace that adrenaline with drugs, alcohol, pot, anything, give you a buzz. Alcohol can be a real good thing if you don't abuse it. I abuse it. I take it too far. I was severely depressed. I was thinking of eating a gun. And at that point, I had started to address my PTSD, particularly when I got to Northampton, which is a psychiatric hospital, and they really addressed the situation. I learned what an asshole I'd been to my family, and that I would go into rages and berate them for minor things. And I saw what I was doing, but I couldn't stop. And when I did stop and I got myself under control, I packed everything I could in my car, clothes and shit, so I could go to work, and I left. And I've never been back. Because I didn't want my kids growing up under an asshole like me. I'm 65 years old and retired, and I enjoy being an alcoholic. A lot of situations relate to combat situations. If I'm drinking, of course I can't drive, so I'm not out there intermingling and so forth, but definitely the drinking is, has some long, hard lines of connection with the PTSD. I'm not happy with the lack of closeness with my family. I'm not happy with the standoffish attitude I have to take with my grandchildren. There are other things that I'm happy about, but happiness just doesn't fit into the formula of life. Until I have a few drinks. And if I'm drinking, I can't be around my grandchildren. I'd like to more then, but I don't see where it's appropriate for an alcoholic grandfather to be hanging out with the little guys.
It's amazing. Vietnam could be the most beautiful place in the world, calm, with nothing going on, and then all of a sudden, when you least expect it, the shit would hit the fan. I'd wake up once in a while and I would be having visions of like people's body parts, like that's one outpost I went to. I would see the wreckage of the plane with the burned out guts of it, or the interior of the plane. And the two guys I happen to know real well, Captain Sawyer and Mr. Phillips, and seeing what was left of them. And those things were, I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about those things. And, you know, what I would do, when I came back in from the field, I would sit someplace and just kill a case, you know, and it helped me get to sleep. Because you know, it used to frighten the hell out of me when I think about these things. I wake up and just sit there. But, you know, those things are something a young person in their 20s doesn't see every day. You know, I was raised in a suburban village. You know, the most exciting thing that went on in Ann's was the lights, the street lights. So when you see that kind of stuff, you just don't forget it. And once in a while, it just creeps back in. So alcohol provided a way of forgetting about it, making sure I didn't get bothered by it when I was sleeping. PTSD was really not a major thing for me, because once you start picking up alcohol, alcohol finds its own way into the total addiction. I had a total of 3 DWIs when I was drinking. See, one of the things that I found out about my own addiction to alcohol is it affected my thinking, or I shouldn't even say affected my thinking, because I didn't do any. You know, the hell with it, you know. I'm not going to get caught. I'll wait till it's dark till I drive by car. They won't see it. Like I'm the only guy, you know, driving in traffic that's drunk, but nobody will see me, you know. And I got away with it. You know, if you get away with it for 1 or 2 days, say, well, you know, you become 10 foot tall and bulletproof. You think, well, I'm not going to get caught. And then your self-esteem just goes to the pits, because you can't depend on yourself to do anything. You make up your mind, say you had every intention in the world of doing the right thing, but alcohol just robs you of it. You just don't give a shit. And you just don't show up for even life.
In denying, well, I ran into a person who was a private, and the person turned around and just sat there and told me, you're going to have to make a change if you're going to survive in Vietnam. Your mindset change because of the violence that's going on. And you can care about somebody, but you didn't care about somebody. If somebody was really hurt real bad, better him than me. The people passed away, better him than me. You had to become blank. I was on the front line. I lived there. I didn't see no USO shows. I became part of that environment. The sad portion about it, at one time, I had became good at what I was doing. I had became violent. That portion is sad, you know. You go crazy. Excuse me. You go crazy. You drank because you got away from the violence. And somebody said, the violence, yeah. There were things in Vietnam I'm never gonna bring up. That person don't exist anymore. Because that person don't exist anymore, it's not gonna be alcohol that exists. I turned around and I didn't like drinking, but I turned around and the reason that I drank is because I was trying to hide something else, or the violence in Vietnam. Just because people turn around in the service and they come back with these great war stories and stuff, that most of the time I look at them and just flat, you're lying. If you hurt somebody, you ain't gonna talk about it. That person was once living and breathing just like you. And then they not living, they not breathing. It does something in your own head. And there's a side of you that you lose it. Getting that person back is hard. And somebody said, well, getting that person back is hard. There are people that I've seen that haven't came back, and it's been over 40-something years. And somebody said, what? They living, they breathing, but they haven't came back. Some people are laughing clown at them. They alcoholics, they drug addicts. They may have seen somebody get hurt. They may have seen somebody been overran, and they can't deal with that there. They don't have really a deprogram from anybody that go to a war zone. That to me is sad. For veterans, I'm saying that you need to go and get help. Talk to other professional people in the field that gonna help you. If you turn around and not looking for the help or looking for your own independence, you're gonna have a lot of trouble in your life.
Welch is director for the Center for Veterans and Veteran Family Services at Damon College, and on August 15, 2012, he was appointed president of Rembrandt Charms. Jack Michael volunteers as a veterans mentor in the Buffalo Veterans Court.